Princess Zalara of the Corvan Empire stood at the massive viewport of her father's flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger as they approached. Earth, the home of the humans. Her future home, she reminded herself with a bitter taste in her mouth. The Corvan were a proud warrior race, standing nearly 8 feet tall with 4 powerful arms and skin that could deflect most energy weapons. They had conquered half the galaxy through sheer force and superior technology. But the humans were different. Not because they were strong, quite the opposite. They were weak, small, fragile creatures that had barely managed to spread across a few dozen systems. But they were smart, dangerously smart. "Princess, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel," announced Commander Thex, his voice carrying the usual disdain that all Corvan felt when dealing with lesser species. "Put it through," Zalara sighed. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a human male in what she assumed was their military uniform. He was average height for his species, barely reaching her shoulder if they stood together, with dark hair and calm brown eyes. This was Captain Marcus Chen, the human she was supposed to marry to seal the peace treaty between their species. "Princess Zalara," he said with a slight bow, "I am honored to meet you. I hope your journey was comfortable." Zalara studied him carefully. He seemed ordinary. Nothing special about him at all. Just another weak human trying to look important. "Captain Chen, yes, the journey was fine. I trust your people have prepared suitable accommodations?" "Of course. We have prepared quarters aboard our station that should meet your needs, though I should mention, they may seem modest compared to what you're used to." Modest. That was one word for it. The human space station they were approaching looked like scrap metal held together with hope and prayer compared to the gleaming warships of the Corvan fleet. Zalara could see why her father had agreed to this marriage. The humans were clearly no threat to anyone. "I understand this arrangement is difficult for both of us," Marcus continued, "but I believe we can make it work. Peace between our peoples is worth any personal sacrifice." Zalara almost laughed. Personal sacrifice? What did this little human know about sacrifice? She was a princess of the greatest empire in the galaxy, and she was being married off to a member of what was essentially a primitive species, just because they had managed to develop some interesting technologies that her father wanted access to. "Indeed," she replied coolly. "I look forward to getting this over with." If Marcus was offended by her tone, he didn't show it. "We'll begin the formal ceremonies tomorrow. Tonight I thought you might like to see something of our culture. Perhaps dinner?" "Very well." The call ended, and Zalara turned to find her father approaching. Emperor Vokran was massive even by Corvan standards, his 4 arms adorned with the battle scars of countless conquests. His presence commanded instant respect from every warrior in the fleet. "You seem displeased, daughter," he rumbled. "Father, this human is insignificant." "Are you certain this alliance is worth my marriage to such a creature?" Vokran's eyes glowed with amusement. "Zalara, you judge too quickly. Yes, the humans appear weak, but they have held their territory against 3 different invasion attempts by the Zephyrian Confederation. A confederation that has ships and weapons nearly equal to our own." "But father, look at them. They're tiny, fragile things. How could they possibly—" "That is what we are here to learn." Vokran placed one of his massive hands on her shoulder. "The humans have something we need, daughter. Their technology is advancing at an impossible rate. In just 50 years, they've gone from barely achieving faster-than-light travel to developing weapons that even our scientists don't understand. This marriage will give us access to their knowledge." Zalara nodded reluctantly. She understood the political necessity, but that didn't make it any easier to accept. Several hours later, Zalara found herself aboard the human station, walking through corridors that were cramped by Corvin standards but functional. Everything about the humans seemed focused on efficiency rather than grandeur. Their technology was clean and practical, lacking the ornate decorations that marked Corvin's superiority. Marcus met her at the docking bay, now dressed in civilian clothes that made him look even more ordinary. He was accompanied by a small group of humans. His family, she assumed. "Princess, allow me to introduce my parents, Dr. Sarah Chen and Professor David Chen. My sister, Lieutenant Commander Lisa Chen, and my brother, Dr. Michael Chen." Zalara noticed that every human he introduced had some kind of academic or military title. Curious, among the Corvin, only the strongest rose to prominence. But humans seemed to value knowledge as much as strength. "It's an honor to meet you, Princess," said Dr. Sarah Chen. She was a small woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. "We hope you'll find our home welcoming." "Thank you," Zalara replied stiffly. These people were being polite, but she could sense their nervousness. They were clearly intimidated by her presence, as they should be. Marcus led her through the station, pointing out various facilities. She was surprised by how advanced some of their technology appeared. Their computer systems were more sophisticated than she had expected, and their medical facilities looked cutting edge. "This is our research sector," Marcus explained as they entered a large laboratory space. "We're working on several projects that might interest you: energy research, materials science, theoretical physics." Zalara barely listened as various human scientists explained their work. Most of it sounded like primitive fumbling around the edges of real science. But there were a few things that caught her attention. They were working with quantum mechanics in ways that even Corvin scientists had not attempted, and their artificial intelligence research was surprisingly advanced. "Interesting," she admitted grudgingly, "though I'm not sure how these theories could have practical applications." "Would you like to see a demonstration?" asked Dr. Michael Chen, Marcus's brother. He was younger than the captain, with an excited gleam in his eyes that reminded Zalara of Corvin younglings when they discovered a new weapon. "Very well." Dr. Chen led them to a testing chamber where a small device sat on a pedestal. It looked unremarkable, just a metal sphere about the size of Zalara's fist. "This is a prototype quantum resonance generator," Dr. Chen explained. "It can manipulate matter at the subatomic level, allowing us to alter the fundamental properties of materials." He activated the device. Instantly, the metal wall in front of them began to change. The steel plating shimmered and transformed, becoming transparent, then harder than diamond, then liquid, then returning to its original state. Zalara stepped back in shock. "That's impossible. Matter cannot be restructured so easily." "We thought so too," Dr. Chen grinned. "But humans have a tendency to make the impossible possible." Marcus watched her reaction carefully. "This is just one of many projects we're working on. We believe that science, not warfare, is the key to advancing civilization." Zalara felt a chill run down her spine. If humans could manipulate matter like this, what else were they capable of? Suddenly, this marriage alliance seemed less like her father taking advantage of a primitive species, and more like something else entirely. The dinner that followed was an awkward affair. Zalara struggled with the small human furniture and utensils while trying to maintain her dignity. The food was adequate but strange. Humans apparently enjoyed complex flavors rather than the simple nutrition that Corvin preferred. "Tell me about your military," she said to Marcus during the meal. "I understand you've had some conflicts with the Zephyrian Confederation." Marcus's expression became serious. 3 invasion attempts over the past 20 years. Each time they underestimated us." "How so?" "They looked at our small ships and primitive weapons and assumed we would be easy prey. They were wrong." "But your ships are small," Zalara pointed out. "Your weapons are limited. How could you possibly stand against the Zephyrian battlecruisers? Marcus smiled, a strange expression that didn't reach his eyes. Because we fight differently. Corvan tactics rely on overwhelming force and superior firepower. Zephyrian tactics rely on advanced shielding and precision strikes. Human tactics rely on creativity. Creativity? We think outside the box. We find solutions that others don't consider. We turn weaknesses into strengths and use our enemy's power against them. Zalara frowned. This sounded like the boasting of a weak species trying to seem more important than they were, but the fact remained that humans had successfully defended their territory against a major galactic power. There had to be more to the story. After dinner, Marcus walked her back to her quarters. The corridors were dimly lit for the human sleep cycle, and they passed few people on the way. "I know this is difficult for you," Marcus said quietly. "Being married to someone you've never met, from a species you don't understand. It's difficult for me, too." Zalara looked down at him. In the dim light, he seemed even smaller and more fragile than before. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" She considered the question. "Someone more impressive, I suppose. More worthy of a princess of the Corvan Empire." Marcus stopped walking and turned to face her. "Princess, can I tell you something? In human culture, worth isn't determined by size or strength or royal bloodlines. It's determined by what you do with the life you're given, how you treat others, how you face challenges, how you protect the things you care about." "And what do you care about, Captain?" "My family, my people, peace between our species, the hope that maybe someday the galaxy can be a place where different races work together instead of conquering each other." Zalara studied his face in the dim light. There was something in his eyes, a quiet intensity that reminded her of her father just before he made a strategic decision that would reshape the political landscape of entire sectors. "You really believe this marriage will work?" she asked. "I believe it has to work, because the alternative is a war that will destroy both our peoples." That night, alone in her quarters, Zalara stood at the small viewport looking out at the human fleet. The ships were small and unremarkable, nothing like the massive dreadnoughts of the Corvan Empire. But something about them bothered her. They seemed efficient, purposeful, like tools designed for a specific job rather than displays of power. Her father had told her that the humans had repelled 3 Zephyrian invasions. The Zephyrians weren't weak. Their technology was nearly equal to the Corvan, and their warriors were fierce. So how had these small, fragile humans managed to defeat them? More importantly, what was she really getting herself into with this marriage? As she prepared for sleep, Zalara couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to humans, and to Marcus Chen specifically, than met the eye. Tomorrow would bring the formal ceremonies, and she would officially become part of this strange species family. She just hoped she was making the right choice, because something told her that once she was bound to Marcus Chen, there would be no going back. And despite his humble appearance and peaceful words, she was beginning to suspect that her new husband might be far more dangerous than any Corvan warrior. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, for reasons she couldn't understand, it almost excited her. The wedding ceremony was unlike anything Zalara had ever experienced. Corvan marriages were displays of power and conquest, with elaborate shows of wealth and strength. Human marriages, she discovered, were about connection and commitment. She stood beside Marcus on the observation deck of the space station, wearing a modified version of her royal ceremonial armor to accommodate the human tradition of white wedding garments. Marcus wore a simple black uniform with silver insignia she didn't recognize. The ceremony itself was brief and focused on promises rather than displays of dominance. When Marcus placed the simple metal band on her finger, Zalara felt a strange sensation, not the triumph of a political victory, but something warmer and more personal. "I promise to stand beside you," Marcus said, looking directly into her eyes, "no matter what challenges we face." 3 days into their marriage, those challenges arrived with the scream of hyperspace alarms. Zalara was in the station's library, trying to understand human literature, when the emergency klaxons began wailing. Red lights flashed throughout the corridors as humans moved with practiced efficiency to emergency stations. She found Marcus in the command center, standing before a massive holographic display that showed the local star system. 3 large ships had dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, ships she recognized with growing dread. "Zephyrian attack cruisers," announced the tactical officer. "Configuration suggests heavy assault class. They're demanding surrender of all human installations in this sector." Zalara's blood ran cold. A single Zephyrian heavy assault cruiser could level entire planetary surfaces. 3 of them against this small human outpost was not a battle. It was an execution. "Marcus," she said urgently, "you need to evacuate. Those ships can destroy everything in this system. We should contact my father's fleet." "No." Marcus's voice was calm, almost casual. "We've got this." Zalara stared at him in disbelief. "You've got this? Marcus, those are Zephyrian war cruisers. Each one is 5 kilometers long and carries enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Your entire fleet is maybe 20 ships, each smaller than their fighters." Marcus turned to his communications officer. "Signal the Zephyrians. Tell them they have 30 minutes to leave this system or face the consequences." The communications officer, a young woman who looked barely old enough to be out of training, nodded without hesitation. "Yes, sir." Zalara grabbed Marcus's arm with one of her hands. "Are you insane? You can't threaten ships like that with what you have here." "Princess," Marcus said gently, "trust me." The response from the Zephyrian commander came quickly. The main screen showed a reptilian face with glowing red eyes and ceremonial battle scars covering his scaled cheeks. "Human commander," the Zephyrian hissed, "I am war leader Kashix of the Crimson Fleet. You will surrender all installations in this system immediately, or we will reduce them to component atoms. You have 10 minutes to comply." Marcus stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. Zalara was amazed by his composure. He looked like he was discussing the weather rather than facing imminent annihilation. "War Leader Kashix, I am Captain Marcus Chen of the United Human Defense Force. You have violated human territorial space. You have 29 minutes to withdraw, or we will remove you." The Zephyrian's eyes flared brighter. "Remove us? With what army, little human? I see your pathetic ships. My smallest fighter could destroy your largest vessel." 28 minutes, Marcus said calmly. The transmission cut off. Immediately, the tactical display showed the Zephyrian ships beginning their approach. They were moving slowly, confidently, predators taking their time with helpless prey. "Marcus, please," Zalara said desperately. "Those ships will slaughter everyone here. At least let me contact my father." "Tactical," Marcus said, ignoring her plea. "Status on the defensive grid?" "All platforms online, sir. Quantum mines are deployed. Stealth field generators are ready. Engineering. Resonance cannons charged to full capacity. Matter disruptors standing by. Probability drives are spun up and ready." Zalara felt her confusion growing. These terms meant nothing to her. Quantum mines? Resonance cannons? What kind of weapons were those? "Communications. Send the withdrawal order to all civilian vessels. Military vessels, implement Delta Protocol." Around the command center, human officers worked with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, just calm professionalism. It was like watching the crew of a Corvan dreadnought preparing for battle, except these were humans facing impossible odds. On the tactical display, the small human ships began to move. Instead of forming defensive formations around the station, they scattered in seemingly random directions. Some disappeared entirely from the sensors. "What are they doing?" Zalara asked. "Getting into position," Marcus replied. The Zephyrian ships continued their approach, their massive forms growing larger on the display. As they passed the outer edge of the asteroid field that surrounded the human station, something remarkable happened. Space itself seemed to ripple around the Zephyrian ships. Zalara watched in amazement as what she had thought were asteroids suddenly revealed themselves to be camouflaged weapons platforms. Beams of energy, unlike anything she had ever seen, lanced out from dozens of hidden positions. But these weren't normal energy weapons. As the beams struck the Zephyrian ships, they didn't explode or burn through the armor. Instead, the ships themselves began to change. Hull plating became brittle and cracked. Energy shields flickered and failed as their harmonic frequencies shifted. "Resonance cannons," Marcus explained calmly. "They alter the molecular structure of whatever they hit. Very effective against enemy armor." The lead Zephyrian cruiser returned fire, massive plasma bolts lashing out toward the human positions. But the energy beams passed harmlessly through empty space. The weapons platforms they were targeting had simply vanished. "Stealth field generators," Marcus continued. "We learned a long time ago that if you can't be stronger than your enemy, be invisible." Zalara watched in growing amazement as the battle unfolded. The Zephyrian ships, despite their massive size and firepower, couldn't seem to hit anything. Their sensors showed targets that weren't there and missed threats that were right in front of them. Meanwhile, the human weapons continued their work. The resonance cannons were weakening the enemy ship's armor, while something else, those quantum mines Marcus's officer had mentioned, began to detonate in carefully timed sequences around the Zephyrian formation. But these weren't normal explosions either. Each detonation created a sphere of twisted space-time that pulled at the enemy ships, throwing them off course and disrupting their navigation systems. "Impossible," Zalara whispered. The Zephyrian commander's voice crackled over the communication system. "What sorcery is this? Our sensors show nothing but our weapons miss every target." Marcus activated the communication channel. "War Leader Kashyyyk, you now have 15 minutes to withdraw from this system. My offer is still open." "Never. Zephyrian warriors do not retreat from inferior species." "Your choice." Marcus nodded to his tactical officer. "Implement Omega Protocol." Suddenly, the small human ships that had seemed to retreat earlier reappeared throughout the Zephyrian formation. But they weren't where sensors said they should be. They were inside the enemy formation, between the massive cruisers, moving in impossible patterns that defied the laws of physics. "Probability drives," Marcus explained to Zalara's unspoken question. "They allow our ships to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Very difficult to target something that might not actually be there." The human ships opened fire with weapons Zalara had never seen before. Matter disruptors, Marcus had called them. As the beams struck the Zephyrian vessels, sections of hull simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, deleted, erased from reality at the subatomic level. The largest Zephyrian cruiser, War Leader Kashyyyk's flagship, shuddered as entire sections of its superstructure vanished. Emergency lights flashed across its hull, as atmosphere vented from the gaps where solid metal had been moments before. "This is impossible!" Kashyyyk's voice was tinged with panic now. "These weapons do not exist. Matter cannot be simply unmade." Marcus's expression remained calm. "You're thinking like a Zephyrian war leader. You assume that because your scientists say something is impossible, it must be true. Human scientists prefer to prove what is possible." The second Zephyrian cruiser attempted to ram one of the human ships, using its massive bulk as a weapon. The human vessel, barely a tenth the size of its attacker, simply phased through the cruiser's hull like it was made of mist. "How?" Zalara gasped. "Quantum phasing technology. Another little innovation our physicists came up with. Very useful for avoiding collisions." As the human ship passed through the Zephyrian cruiser, it left something behind. A moment later, the entire enemy vessel convulsed as internal explosions tore it apart from within. "Quantum bombs," Marcus noted, "deposited directly into the ship's reactor core, much more efficient than trying to penetrate their armor from the outside." The third Zephyrian ship, seeing the fate of its companions, attempted to retreat. But as it turned to flee, space around it seemed to fold in on itself. The massive cruiser was suddenly trapped in a gravity well that hadn't existed a moment before. "Artificial gravity generator," Marcus said. "Borrowed the concept from black hole physics. Creates localized gravitational fields strong enough to trap even large ships." Zalara watched in stunned silence as the trapped cruiser was pulled inexorably toward the artificial gravity well. Its engines screamed at maximum power, but it couldn't escape. "War Leader Kashyyyk," Marcus said over the communications channel, "you now have two options. Surrender and we'll release your ship, or continue fighting and join your companions." The Zephyrian commander's face appeared on screen again. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by a mixture of fear and rage. "This cannot be! You are a primitive species! We have conquered 100 worlds! Our technology is advanced beyond your comprehension." "And yet," Marcus said quietly, "here we are." There was a long moment of silence. Then Kashyyyk's shoulders slumped in defeat. We surrender. Release my ship, and we will withdraw from this system." "Agreed. But War Leader, you need to understand something. This was a defensive action. We used minimum force to protect our territory. If you return, if any Zephyrian ship enters human space again, we won't be so gentle." The gravity well dissipated, freeing the Zephyrian cruiser. Within minutes, all three enemy ships had jumped back into hyperspace, fleeing as fast as their engines could carry them. As the red alert lights faded and the command center returned to normal operations, Zalara found herself staring at Marcus with new eyes. This quiet, unassuming human had just defeated three of the most powerful warships in the galaxy using weapons and tactics she had never imagined possible. "How?" she asked softly. "How did you do all of that? Those weapons, those technologies? Some of them shouldn't even be theoretically possible." Marcus turned to face her, and for the first time since she had met him, she saw something other than calm politeness in his eyes. There was a depth there, an intelligence that seemed to go far beyond what she had initially perceived. "Zalara, can I tell you a secret about humanity?" She nodded, unable to speak. "We're not actually the primitive species everyone thinks we are. We just let them think that because it's useful. When your enemies underestimate you, they make tactical errors. When they assume you're weak, they don't prepare for your real capabilities. But the Corvin intelligence reports, they said humans had barely achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago." Marcus smiled, that same expression she had seen before, but now she understood what it meant. "We achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. We just didn't tell anyone. We spent those extra 150 years developing weapons and technologies in secret, preparing for the day when the galaxy's major powers would turn their attention to us." "You've been lying. This whole time, you've been pretending to be less advanced than you actually are." Strategic deception, very useful in warfare, and in diplomacy. Zalara felt a chill run down her spine. Then this marriage, the alliance with the Corvin Empire, was that part of the deception too? Marcus's expression softened. "No, Zalara. The marriage is real. My feelings for you are real. The hope for peace between our peoples is real. But you needed to understand, what humanity is really capable of before we could move forward. And what are you capable of? Marcus looked out at the stars visible through the command center's viewport. We're capable of anything we decide is necessary. The weapons you saw today, they're just the beginning. We've been preparing for war with every major power in the galaxy for 2 centuries. Not because we want to fight, but because we know that eventually someone will force us to. Zalara followed his gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there, her father's fleet was waiting for word of the marriage's success. Somewhere else. The Zephyrian survivors were probably reporting their impossible defeat to their superiors. And throughout the galaxy, other powers were making their own plans for conquest and expansion. She was beginning to understand that she had married into something far more complex and dangerous than she had ever imagined. Marcus Chen wasn't just a human officer. He was a representative of a species that had been quietly preparing to reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Marcus said, "we see if your father is as wise as you are intelligent, because very soon, the secret of human capabilities is going to get out. When it does, every power in the galaxy will have to choose. Ally with us, or face the consequences." Zalara looked at her new husband with a mixture of awe and growing fear. She had married him to secure peace. Now she was beginning to wonder if she had actually married the most dangerous man in the galaxy. The warning came 6 months after the Zephyrian defeat. Zalara was working in Marcus's study, learning about human military history, when the emergency transmission arrived from her father's flagship. Emperor Vokran's image filled the holographic display, but instead of his usual commanding presence, Zalara saw something she had never witnessed before: fear. "Daughter, you must leave human space immediately. The Grand Alliance has formed against humanity. 7 empires, including our own, are moving to destroy the human threat before it grows beyond control." Zalara's blood turned to ice. "Father, what are you talking about? What threat?" "The Zephyrians shared their battle recordings. Those weapons, those technologies your husband's people used. The Alliance Council has declared humanity a threat to galactic stability. Even now, our combined fleets are approaching human space. Over 3,000 ships, daughter. Return home immediately." The transmission ended, leaving Zalara staring at the empty display. 3,000 ships from 7 different empires, all united in purpose for the first time in galactic history. Every major power in known space had decided that humanity was too dangerous to survive. She found Marcus in the command center, standing calmly before the tactical display as if nothing unusual was happening. But the display showed a terrifying sight: massive fleet formations approaching from 7 different directions, surrounding human space in a slowly closing noose. "Marcus," Zalara said urgently, "you have to evacuate. My father's message said 3,000 ships. The Corvan Empire alone has 600 vessels in that fleet, with the Zephyrians, the Altarian Republic, the Hegemony, the Crystal Confederation." "I know who's coming," Marcus interrupted gently. "We've been tracking their movements for weeks." "Then you know you can't fight them. Even with your advanced weapons, you can't face the combined might of 7 empires." Marcus turned to look at her, and again she saw that depth in his eyes that she was beginning to recognize. "Zalara, do you remember what I told you about humanity? About how we prepare for anything we decide is necessary?" "Yes, but we've been preparing for this exact scenario for 200 years, not just the possibility of fighting one empire, but the possibility of fighting all of them at once." Zalara felt her knees weaken. "All of them? Marcus, that's impossible. No single species could stand against the combined military might of the galactic powers." "You're thinking like them," Marcus said softly. "You're assuming that superior numbers and conventional firepower determine the outcome of battles. But humans stopped thinking conventionally a long time ago." The tactical display updated, showing the approaching fleets in detail. Zalara recognized the massive dreadnoughts of her father's Imperial Navy, the sleek battle cruisers of the Altarian Republic, the crystal-hulled warships of the Confederation. Each fleet was large enough to conquer entire sectors on its own. "Sir," called the communications officer. "Incoming transmission from the lead Alliance vessel." "Put it through." The main screen filled with the image of Admiral Karanak, the Corvan Empire's greatest military commander. He was a legend among their people, having conquered 43 different species over his long career. Zalara had grown up hearing stories of his tactical genius. "Human Commander," Karanak's voice boomed. "I am Admiral Karanak of the Grand Alliance Fleet. You are hereby ordered to surrender all human military installations and submit to Alliance authority. You have 1 hour to comply before we begin bombardment operations." Marcus stepped forward, his hands again clasped behind his back in that casual pose that had become familiar to Zalara. "Admiral Karanak, I am Admiral Marcus Chen of the United Human Defense Force." Zalara started. "Admiral?" When had Marcus been promoted? "Admiral Chen," Karanak continued, "I have studied the reports from the Zephyrian encounter. Your weapons are indeed advanced, but you face not 3 ships, but 3,000. Surrender now, and your people will be allowed to live under Alliance rule." "Admiral," Marcus replied calmly, "I have a counter-proposal. You have 1 hour to withdraw all Alliance forces from human space before we remove them." The silence that followed was deafening. Even Zalara couldn't believe what she had just heard. Marcus was threatening a fleet of 3,000 ships with what appeared to be maybe 50 human vessels. Karanak's laughter echoed through the command center. "Remove us? Admiral Chen, perhaps you do not understand the situation. The Grand Alliance represents the combined military power of 7 galactic empires. We have weapons that can destroy stars. We have ships that can crack planets. You have, what? A few dozen vessels with some clever technology?" "Admiral Karanak," Marcus said, his voice taking on a tone Zalara had never heard before, something ancient and infinitely patient. "You are about to learn why humanity has survived when so many other species have not." The transmission ended. Immediately, alerts began sounding throughout the command center. The Alliance fleets were moving into attack formation. "Status report," Marcus commanded. "All deep space platforms are online," reported the tactical officer. "Genesis protocol weapons are charged. Omega-level defenses are active. The Prometheus array is standing by." Zalara had never heard any of these terms before. Each one sounded more ominous than the last. "Engineering. Stellar manipulation devices are locked onto target stars. Dimensional breach generators are ready. The Chronos system is fully operational." "What are you talking about?" Zalara demanded. "What are these weapons? Stellar manipulation? Dimensional breaches?" Marcus looked at her with something approaching sympathy. "Zalara, I need you to understand something about human warfare. We don't just think outside the box. We destroy the box and rewrite the rules of physics." The tactical display suddenly expanded, showing not just the local star system, but the entire sector. Zalara gasped as she saw what the display was revealing: thousands of previously undetected objects throughout space. Massive structures hidden in asteroid fields, camouflaged stations orbiting distant planets, weapons platforms that dwarfed the largest Alliance ships. "How many ships do you actually have?" she whispered. "Ships?" Marcus smiled. "Zalara, we don't build ships. We build instruments of cosmic engineering." The Alliance fleets opened fire, thousands of energy beams and missile salvos lancing through space toward human positions. Zalara watched in amazement as the attacks simply disappeared into what appeared to be empty space. "Dimensional shields," Marcus explained. "The incoming fire is being redirected to empty regions of space-time, very efficient for defense." But the human response was unlike anything Zalara had ever imagined possible. Instead of returning fire with conventional weapons, reality itself seemed to turn against the Alliance fleets. Around the Corvan Imperial Navy, space began to fold in on itself. Zalara watched in horror as her father's mighty dreadnoughts were caught in gravitational anomalies that crushed their kilometer-long hulls like paper. But these weren't natural phenomena. They were being artificially generated by hidden human installations. Gravity manipulation on a stellar scale, Marcus noted calmly. We learned to harness the same forces that power black holes. The Altarian fleet found itself trapped in bubbles of altered time. Their ships moved in slow motion, while human weapons struck at normal speed, making them sitting targets. Within minutes, dozens of proud Altarian cruisers were drifting hulks. Temporal distortion fields, Marcus continued. Time is just another dimension to be manipulated. The Crystal Confederation's ships began to simply cease existing, not destroyed, erased. Their crystal hulls, renowned for being indestructible, cracked and vanished as the fundamental forces holding their atoms together were systematically dismantled. Molecular disintegration beams, operating at the subatomic level to dissolve atomic bonds. But the most terrifying sight was what happened to the hegemony fleet. As they attempted to retreat, the very stars around them began to move. Zalara watched in stunned disbelief as an entire star system's primary sequence star was guided like a guided missile toward the fleeing ships. "You're moving stars," she gasped. "Stellar engineering," Marcus confirmed. "Once you understand how gravity works at the quantum level, moving celestial bodies becomes simply a matter of applying sufficient force in the right direction." The fleeing star overtook the hegemony fleet and consumed them in nuclear fire, an entire naval armada vaporized in seconds by a weapon that was literally a sun. "This is impossible," Zalara breathed. "These technologies, they're beyond anything any species has ever achieved. You're manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe itself." "Yes," Marcus said simply. Admiral Coronac's image appeared on the screen again, but the proud military leader was gone. In his place was a being consumed by terror and disbelief. "What are you?" he demanded. "What species develops weapons like this? How long have you been hiding these capabilities?" "Admiral," Marcus replied, "humanity has been preparing for this moment for longer than your civilization has existed. We've had 2,000 years to develop our understanding of physics while the rest of the galaxy played with conventional warfare." 2,000 years? But your first contact protocols indicated you achieved spaceflight only recently. Our first contact protocols indicated what we wanted you to believe. In reality, humans have been spacefaring for 2 millennia. We've been watching, learning, preparing for the day when we would have to defend ourselves against species like yours. Zalara felt reality shifting around her as she processed this revelation. Everything she had been told about humanity was a lie. They weren't a young, primitive species at all. They were older than most galactic civilizations. With technology so advanced, it appeared to be magic. "But why hide?" she asked. "With power like this, you could have conquered the galaxy centuries ago." "Because," Marcus said, his voice carrying a weight of ages, "conquest was never our goal. We wanted to be left alone to pursue knowledge and growth. But we also knew that eventually someone would force us to fight. So we prepared." The battle, if it could even be called that, was over within an hour. Of the 3,000 ships that had attacked human space, fewer than 200 survived to retreat. The greatest military alliance in galactic history had been destroyed by what appeared to be empty space itself. As reports came in from across the battle zone, Zalara learned the true scope of human capabilities. They had weapons that could rearrange matter at the subatomic level, defenses that redirected attacks into parallel dimensions, and propulsion systems that manipulated space-time itself. They could move planets, extinguish stars, and create pocket universes to trap enemy fleets. The Genesis Protocol, Marcus explained as they watched the aftermath, allows us to accelerate stellar evolution. We can turn any star into a supernova on command. The Chronos system manipulates time flow across entire star systems. The Prometheus array can create and destroy matter by manipulating quantum foam. You're describing the powers of gods, Zalara whispered. No, Marcus said softly. We're describing the powers of a species that refuse to accept limitations. Every law of physics that other races considered unbreakable, we treated as a challenge to overcome. Emperor Vokran's image appeared on the display, transmitted from his flagship at the edge of the system. Zalara's father looked older than she had ever seen him, his 4 arms hanging limply at his sides in defeat. Admiral Chen, he said formally. The Grand Alliance formally requests terms of surrender. Emperor Vokran, Marcus replied, there will be no surrender. There will be withdrawal. All Alliance forces will immediately return to their home territories and never again enter human space. In return, humanity will continue to respect existing territorial boundaries and will not expand into Alliance space. And if we refuse, Marcus gestured to the tactical display, which now showed human installations throughout the galaxy, installations that had been there all along, hidden and waiting. Then we will demonstrate why the universe belongs to whoever understands it best. Vokran stared at the display for a long moment, seeing human positions in every major star system in the galaxy. They weren't just defending their own space. They were embedded everywhere, had been watching everything, for centuries. We accept your terms, he said finally. As the Alliance fleets retreated and human space returned to peaceful routine, Zalara found herself alone with Marcus on the observation deck of the command station. How long have you known? She asked. About what humanity really is? All my life, Marcus replied. Every human knows our real history from childhood. We've been preparing for this day for 2,000 years, building weapons and technologies that other species couldn't even imagine. And the marriage? Was that part of your plan too? Marcus turned to face her, and for the first time since she had met him, his expression was completely unguarded. No, Zalara. The marriage was hope. Hope that maybe, just once, we could build bridges instead of weapons. Hope that someone would see past our deception to what we really want, which is peace, knowledge, a galaxy where species cooperate instead of conquering each other. You were supposed to be the beginning of that dream. Zalara studied his face in the starlight. This man she had married, this being who commanded weapons that could reshape reality itself, was still hoping for peace. Marcus, what you showed them today, you could rule the galaxy, force everyone to cooperate. Yes, he admitted. But cooperation forced through fear isn't really cooperation. It's just another form of conquest, and we've seen what conquest leads to. Zalara thought about the battle she had just witnessed, about her husband casually moving stars and erasing fleets from existence. She had married him thinking she was securing an alliance with a primitive species. Instead, she had married the most powerful being in the galaxy, a member of a species so advanced they could manipulate the fundamental forces of creation itself. What happens now? She asked. Now, Marcus said, we see if the galaxy is wise enough to learn from today's demonstration. We've shown them what we're capable of. Hopefully, that will be enough to prevent future conflicts. And if it's not? Marcus looked out at the stars, and in his eyes, Zalara saw the weight of millennia of preparation, of technologies beyond imagination, of power that could literally move mountains and extinguish suns. Then, he said quietly, we'll show them what a species with 2,000 years of preparation can really do. Zalara took his hand, feeling the warmth of human skin that concealed godlike power. She had married him to secure peace between their peoples. Now she understood that she had married into something far greater and more terrifying than she had ever dreamed possible. But as they stood together watching the stars, she also realized something else. Despite commanding power that could remake the universe itself, Marcus Chen still held her hand gently, still spoke to her with kindness, still hoped for a future built on cooperation rather than conquest. Perhaps, she thought, that was the most remarkable thing about humanity. They had achieved the power of gods, but they still chose to dream of peace. And maybe, just maybe, that dream was worth protecting with all the terrible, wonderful might they possessed.